It's our purpose to bring to bear the principle of common sense and rational discussion to the issues of our day. America was created at a time of great turmoil, tremendous disagreements, anger, hatred. There was a book written in 1776 that guided much of the discipline of thinking that brought us to the discovery of our freedoms, of our God-given freedoms. It was Thomas Paine's Common Sense, written in 1776, one of the first American bestsellers, in which Thomas Paine explained by rational principles the reason why these small colonies felt the necessity to separate from the powerful Kingdom of England and the King of England. He explained their inherent desire for liberty, freedom, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, and he explained it in ways that were understandable to the people, to all of the people. A great deal of the reason for America's constant ability to self-improve is because we are able to reason, we're able to talk to each other, we're able to listen to each other, and we're able to analyze. We are able to apply our God-given common sense. So let's do it. This is Rudy Giuliani back with another edition of Rudy's Common Sense. Today we have a really very, very interesting guest, someone who's gotten to see something that we all would like to know a lot more about, and probably would all would like to have seen it, but probably not been there. That's Benny Johnson. Benny, it's a great pleasure to have you with us.
Good morning, Rudy.
How did it happen? Tell me how it happened that you decided to go there. Was that in your role, in your present role now with the group?
Yeah, so with Turning Point USA, it's really important for us to expose and establish what a socialist America would look like. It is clearly the choice right now facing America, the decision between tyranny and freedom, the decision between our rights or the rights granted upon us by the state. And it's clear throughout the world what happens, and throughout history, what happens when you let totalitarian socialists and communists take over your country. And it's happening here in America at a very quick clip, and CHOP, or CHAZ, they don't like the name CHAZ, so I like to use the word CHAZ, gets that billing. It shows exactly the future that leftists want in this country.
Well, I think you were in a very unique position, and I congratulate you and Turning Point for being willing to do this. I mean, it was first of all, I used to do this for a living, law enforcement, and you took your life in your hands to do it. Number two, there were so many opportunities for people to mischaracterize both you and your organization. And I think you and I know what they can do to you when they try to ruin you. I really have a great deal of respect for your courage in doing it.
Thank you.
So just tell us, I guess, from the outside, the mayor, and to some extent the governor, particularly the mayor, tried to paint this as almost a kind of a carnival or rally of left-wingers, happy left-wingers. You could see enough.
The summer of love.
You could see enough, just from the footage they were trying to hide. You could see enough that it was armed, that there were battles that went on inside. There were enough store owners who were complaining about being shook down, required to pay them money, that you knew it was the opposite. But I guess, you don't know how bad it is unless you're actually inside it. So just tell us your experience, getting in and what did it feel like to be inside an autonomous zone within the United States of America. I mean, this was a form of secession. I guess a small secession, but secession from the United States of America.
Yes. And strangely enough, even though they would classify themselves as non-racist and non-violent, their secession had a great deal in common with the last secession here in America, Rudy. It seems that the people of CHOP, the Chopistanis, the Antifistan, or the Wokadishus, again, they're still deciding on their name, these people have a lot in common with the Confederacy, which seceded from America 150 plus years ago. They like racial segregation, which is something that was evident inside of CHAZ. You could see multiple parts of CHAZ that were for Black or Indigenous people only. Very strange for an American to see open areas racially segregated. Very odd. They also have no due process or no civil rights that would be reflective of a normal American experience. So what happens is if the mob judges that you have committed a crime or a thought crime or just or a hateful person or individual that they disagree with, they'll come after you. And they came after us inside of CHAZ. They actually
come after you means what? What would they do? Would they beat you up, harass you, or throw things at you? How would that reflect itself?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll tell you what, it reflects itself violently as it often does, and as it does in the last secession movement that started the Civil War, and this secession movement weirdly has similar flares to it. It certainly did show itself to be violent in multiple instances. We captured all of those on camera, but our cameraman had his camera smashed and stolen and a finger broken.
Oh, okay.
When they identified us as from a conservative group. And this goes to show also lack of freedom of the press, something that would be very strange in the American experience. But as I've said many times over, and I've implored the president, please create a travel ban with CHAZ. I think it's important that we create a travel ban so we know who's really coming into our country from CHAZ. Right. And I would be in full favor of that.
Yeah, that would be an excellent idea. The people there are all full subscribers to the entire mission, right? There aren't some people there that are just naive, happy, silly lefties. These are basically committed anarchists who hate America, want us to hate America, and have some kind of Marxist or who knows what vision of the United States.
Yes.
And I think that's the picture that the American people have not gotten about Antifa and Black Lives Matters. Both of them are very committed Marxist, anarchist movements that seek the overthrow of our government as it exists. Rather than having a government under our Constitution, they want a government where, for example, they pick their own law enforcement officers. The community picks the law enforcement officers. So they picked their own law enforcement officers, and they were people walking. Were they the ones walking around with the AK-47s? And
that's right.
You saw some people there. You saw some people from the outside with AK-47s, but not law enforcement. Obviously, were they the assigned enforcement people?
Sure. So like in any failed state or in any communist state, what happens is the tyrants seize control. In a vacuum, what happens are the bullies, the tyrants, the evil forces inside of a society seize control. You certainly, Mr. Mayor, had to deal with that in New York, in your tenureship in New York. And you also had to deal with terrorism, quite obviously and famously in New York. And CHAZ is a terrorist state in the sense that they will commit terror upon those who they disagree with. What happened in CHAZ to us was that people decided that they disagreed with us and then sent a violent mob after us. Now, praise the Lord, it didn't occur. What didn't happen was actual homicide, because that happened just 2 days after we had left,
right,
when members of this community were shooting and killing each other. And this is an absolute horrific tale to be told about the future that leftists want in this country. They have called this the summer of love. It is actually the summer of horror, and it is the horror dream upon which the Marxist fever dream upon which they want to plunge the entire country, irrevocably so too, because you won't be able to pull this country back from the brink when you bring CHAZ to every major city.
Now, the mayor now has come to the conclusion after, lives were lost, and I think that blood is on her hands directly, but now she's decided that she wants them to go, but she wants them to go voluntarily. How realistic is it that they're going to pick up stakes and just say, okay, this was a lot of fun beating people up and killing people, but now we're going to move on?
Did the criminal element in New York leave voluntarily when you were mayor? Did you just ask them kindly?
I was never naive or stupid enough to ask them to do it. I hate to be refused. So instead I went after them and put them in jail for hundreds of years or whatever I could get. But the whole movement now is to take them out of jail.
That's correct.
We don't put people in jail anymore. We take them out of jail.
That's correct.
I think this would be a good time to take a short break.
A good security system makes a family feel even more secure at home. Simply Safe does just that. It creates a secure home, and it's simple to operate. Simply Safe reinvented the home security industry years ago when they introduced a wireless system using Wi-Fi signals instead of running wires all throughout your house. That eliminates the need and expense for an installation crew. Simply Safe delivers you a pre-tested, pre-configured set of components that are easy to install. If you can remove crack and peel tape, you can install the system in less than 1 hour. 3 million families and counting in America rely on Simply Safe. Your doors and windows and rooms of your home will all be protected by the sensors and motion detectors. There's sound sensors and HD camera components as well. All of those parts are connected with wireless signals within your home, and once they're connected, you can activate Simply Safe's 24/7 monitoring service. All of that costs you just $14.99 a month with no contract to sign. That connects your system with the local police department for a fast response in the event of a home intrusion. It works in houses, condos, and apartments like mine. SimplySafe.com/Rudy is the site. You'll get a 60-day money-back guarantee and a free HD camera with your purchase. Just go to SimplySafe.com/Rudy and order it today. Don't wait. Thank you.
Welcome back to our discussion of the Hate America First group. I mean, do you see CHAZ, autonomous zone? You see that as part of an overall movement of what's going on in this country?
Absolutely.
To sort of break us down, to get us to hate America if they can.
Yep.
To get us to be alienated from each other. And then eventually, whether they can do it or not, I believe it's their committed goal to take down our government.
Yes.
And replace it with something like they had there on a much larger scale.
Correct, Mr. Mayor. It's remarkable. I am no philosopher, nor am I a historian. I have a very room temperature IQ, which is okay because the Communist Manifesto was really written at like a 6th grade reading level, which I think is what a lot of these protesters are at. And so they can read the Communist Manifesto, and I would encourage, actually, strange thing for Benny Johnson from Turning Point USA to be saying on your program,
Benny,
I would encourage people to go back and read it.
You're absolutely correct.
I would encourage people to go back and read it because it is a playbook for what's happening.
I grew up in the Cold War era, and when I was in college, I studied Russia and communism very, very thoroughly. Mm-hmm. Probably know more about it than I need to know. But I find it remarkable. I took out a 2017 manifesto of Black Lives Matter, and I could put it next to the Communist Manifesto. I mean, a lot of the language is exactly the same. I mean, people have no idea that Black Lives Matter is demanding that we do away with all law enforcement, that they get to choose law enforcement, that they can have reparations, which will include not only being paid a salary for the rest of their lives, but they can select land that they want. So if they like your house, they can take your house.
Yes.
Which is, of course, the tenet of socialism. The government decides on your property. And they want a socialist state, completely socialist state. If you read it, you go down the line, it is clearly a modern-day version of the Communist Manifesto. This is not a group that is worried about police officers harming the few people who become the victim of police brutality. In fact, in their manifesto, there's not a single word about police brutality.
Correct. And indeed, Karl Marx, when asked what the goal of communism was, it is the elimination of private property, the ability to take from you that which you have earned and truly the land under your own feet.
And that ultimately gives them control over you because you have nothing.
Yes.
You depend on them for everything, kind of the way they tried to get us during the pandemic, I might add.
Yes.
By shutting us down.
Yes.
Well, Benny, I'm very honored that you gave us some time this morning. I understand you have a very important personal obligation. Your wife is pregnant. Congratulations, and God bless you.
Yes.
And I'm so glad you're safe, and I really would like to talk to you at more length about it, because I think the more light we can shed on this little experiment, I think we can really say to Americans, this is what they have in mind for us. So you better wake up and stop thinking about this in a romantic way. This is a real battle we're going through right now. And we better stand up for our country.
Truly. And it is, I will end with this. It's terrifying to note, if you go through the Communist Manifesto, that the end tenets are a state more powerful than the church. The end goal was a state that could control the church and shut its doors, shut it down. And then what did you see during the pandemic? Churches burned who wouldn't close.
And we weren't allowed to go to church.
They're lighting churches on fire now across the street from the White House.
We weren't allowed to go to church, and they were allowed to protest.
That's correct. That's correct.
We weren't allowed to go to church, 6 feet apart, and they were allowed to protest holding hands. And not only that, just a couple of days ago, one of the Black Lives Matter people suggested that statues of Jesus Christ and the Blessed Mother should be torn down as symbols of white supremacism. So, I mean, nobody's making this up. This is really happening.
If I want the right to baptize my child, it's time to fight. It's time to fight for that.
Well, God bless you.
You want a right to raise your children in this great country.
God bless you, and congratulations at Turning Point.
Thank you, Rudy.
The interview of Benny Johnson was extremely illuminating, particularly with regard to what's going on inside the autonomous zone. I don't think you really needed it in the sense that we all know it, but it is very important to have eyewitness testimony to the fact that this is not what the Democratic liberals, liberal Democrats, and all the people on the left want to make it out to be, which is some kind of a protest involving the death of Mr. Floyd, and that it's very peaceful and it's going to result in a summer of love, I think the rather incompetent, silly mayor of Seattle said. I do want to make the point that incompetence in public office can lead to the death of citizens, and in her case it has, because although she's been talking about the calmness and the peacefulness of the zone, if she had taken action earlier, the person who was killed last, I think it was Saturday night, would not have been killed. That blood is on her hands and on the hands of the governor, squarely and completely. It's their dereliction of duty and their failure to take their oath of office seriously that led to the death of that 19-year-old man, and also to the destruction of an enormous amount of property within the autonomous zone, beatings that we've seen evidence of, including one I just saw this morning of an Asian American who was there, and somehow they didn't trust him and they beat him up, and he walked out with his head all bloodied and I think a few bones broken. We'll be back with you shortly. When your life is in chaos, your home is your safe haven, your most valuable asset. Imagine losing your home to some online scammer. In an instant, you have no place to live, and your home, your security, your nest egg in an emergency isn't yours anymore. Is this even possible? In a word, yes. It's called home title theft, and the FBI calls it one of the fastest growing crimes. My friends at Home Title Lock demonstrated how quickly and easily online scammers can steal our homes. This is a legal title to a home in California. All home titles, yours and mine, are vulnerable. They're kept online, where thieves, foreign and domestic, hunt them. They simply print your home's title, forge your signature, stating you sold your home, put a fake notary seal on it, and refile it as the new owner. In an instant, your home is theirs. Then they can borrow against it, and you'd be responsible for the payments. Or they could try to evict you. I'm serious. Your bank doesn't cover you, and neither does your homeowner's insurance. Home Title Lock does. For pennies a day, Home Title Lock puts a virtual firewall around your home's title. If some cyber thief tampers with your home's title, they're on it, helping to shut it down before you lose your home. Here's what I want you to do. Go to HomeTitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're already a victim and don't know it. You will receive 30 days of free Home Title Lock protection using the promo code Rudy. You need to do this now. Get 30 days of free protection with promo code Rudy at HomeTitleLock.com. Welcome back to Rudy Giuliani's Common Sense. So, since the killing of George Floyd on May 25, 2020, by police officer Chauvin, we had immediately massive protests throughout the country. And you could say that the initial protests were quite justifiable because the killing, the murder of Mr. Floyd was completely unjustifiable. You can't judge a case before it's tried. There may be some extenuating circumstances, but my goodness, what you see from the tape is about as clear as it can be. The police officer has his knee right near the carotid artery. He keeps pressing down, and he is warned, 6, 7 times that he may kill him. He may not be breathing. He isn't breathing. Please stop it. Stop it. And he goes ahead with it, impervious to any of those warnings, and he goes ahead with it being, by and large, guarded by the second police officer. Second police officer also with a totally passive look on his face. Both had very strange looks on their face. They kind of look like executioners that are used to doing this, and they just ignored the clear warnings of the crowd that the man was getting worse, dying, and died. How that's not a murder one case, I don't know. Certainly if I were the prosecutor, it would be. Seems to me that the whole system in Minnesota, which I have to emphasize is a liberal democratic city and state and has been forever, the whole justice system there seems pretty wacky even before this. How he started with murder 3, then murder 2, and why he's struggling with the case so much is hard to believe, other than incompetence. Also, the police action there was very questionable, where he learned how to do that, what made him think he could do that, and the fact that there was never a supervisor on the scene to take charge of these absolutely aberrant police officers is another indictment of how that city is run. Of course, it's run very much like most of the cities run by Democrats, incompetent. Don't know if it's corrupt, but many of them are corrupt. They've been in power so long, they think they own the mayor's office, the police department, and everything else, and they can do anything they want with it. But those peaceful protests, which I think everybody agreed on, the murder of Mr. Floyd was a uniting incident for the country. I even thought, in the wake of its happening, that this might be a chance for us to finally get together and deal with the twin problems of police brutality and black crime, which are inextricably combined and can't be solved one without the other. I thought this was a real opportunity to do that. But immediately, it seemed like it was hijacked. And it went off into exaggerated at first, wildly hysterical attack on the police, as if this happens every day, as if every police officer is like this. And then, can't tell you exactly when, but within a few days, it really got hijacked. Not just by the hysterical political mob who are anti-police, but then by what appear to be the more professional anarchists, the people of Black Lives Matters, Antifa, and similar communist and radical groups. And then it went right to protesting everything they could that they claimed is bad about America, trying to paint all police departments as bad. There's no question from the pattern of these protests that almost by clockwork turned violent in cities like New York and Washington, D.C., and Chicago, and of course Minnesota, about 10 cities where they were really bad. I know the president has indicated this, but it's really quite clear, and it's necessary to point this out if we're ever going to solve it. Every single one of those cities was governed by a so-called progressive, liberal Democrat. And every one of those cities are long-term possessions of the Democrat Party. There could be no way that Republicans are responsible for any good or bad in that city because they've had nothing to do with some of them in 100 years. The only one they can claim having something to do with something good about it is New York, which I reformed between 94 and and 01, 02, and de Blasio is doing a pretty good job of trying to destroy every good thing that I did. And he is returning it to being well, I mean, the last weekend was a weekend of murder and mayhem in New York City, unlike any that we've seen in a long, long time. So these protests turned into violent riots in many cases. It clearly was orchestrated. How directly, how loosely, investigation will determine that, but you can't tell me these were just like all spontaneous demonstrations. I know enough about this, and it's a little while since I've been doing it, but I did it long enough, investigated these things, that I can tell you these were not spontaneous demonstrations. These were demonstrations that were orchestrated and for a purpose, even for the rather disciplined purpose of not going into largely black neighborhoods and destroying their own neighborhoods. It happened a few places, but like in New York, focusing on the more middle class and upper class areas, the rich areas. In one particular night of looting and mayhem and attacks and violence, they made off with $2 million in Rolex watches. Those are not Rolex watches that people are stealing for themselves. Those are Rolex watches that are going to be sold and go into the treasury of Antifa, Black Lives Matter, and the groups that pay for this, that pay to move people around, that pay to do research on, hey, let's not do a stupid riot like we used to do in the past and go burn down, the entire black section of Detroit or the entire black section of New York. In fact, there were little or no riots in those sections of our city. So this was an intelligently, very cynically crafted group of violent riots that took place in probably about 40 or 50 cities, probably 20 where there was significant damage done. The unofficial total between that first day, May 25th, and today is 24 people murdered. Millions, multi-millions of dollars in damage, hundreds, if not thousands, seriously injured. In New York City, 100 police officers alone needed medical help. So the 24 murders tells you the worst of it, but in some ways, in terms of numbers, it may be the least of it. And maybe worse than anything else, a display on national television throughout the world that in these liberal democratic bastions in America, lawlessness is allowed, because the frightening thing that you saw in almost all of these cities, which may be the reason they were selected, is the police standing by watching the crime take place. You saw that in New York, you saw that in Minnesota, you saw that in Chicago, you saw it in Philadelphia. You saw it a lot in Washington, D.C. Again, I emphasize, all governed by mayors who are Democrats, profess to be new leftist Democrats, who even before this were extremely antagonistic toward the police. They reduced police funding. They put constraints on the police. Some of them were elected with the campaign contributions from George Soros, and there's a real question as to why they were elected in the first place, because they seem to have a very anti-law enforcement attitude. So somewhere, somehow, the people who organized this, which would be Antifa and Black Lives Matter, a combination of both, not only selected common methods to be used in these demonstrations, they picked out the cities where they knew they could get away with it. They went to cities where they weren't going to get arrested. They went to cities where extraordinarily, even if they got arrested, the mayor was going to let them out right away, like de Blasio. I mean, I don't know if the American people know that. Do you realize how absurd that is? After 3 or 4 nights of rioting, after 3 or 4 nights of maybe the worst civil disturbances in New York in 30 years, I mean, you have to go back to the last Democratic mayor to find disturbances like this. In the wake of all that, and in an attempt to stop it, the police finally made arrests. But de Blasio made sure those arrests meant nothing because he released them from prison. He released them from prison. I mean, what side is he on? The side of law and order or the side of the criminals? Well, we know what side he's on, because before that, during the pandemic, he released 8,000 criminals, including one famous case in which a rapist was released because he considers rape a nonviolent crime. And of course, the man raped again. De Blasio has the rape of that woman on his conscience. if he has one. The reality is very, very similar thing in Minnesota that may have triggered the whole thing. The boy mayor in Minneapolis, who seems like he's not even ready for school president, made a decision that maybe is the worst decision I can think of in recent times that a mayor could have ever made, and really means he should just resign immediately as a mayor. He gave up a police precinct. He ordered the police to retreat and turn the police precinct without even taking the files out to the rioters, the criminals, the Black Lives Matter, the Antifa people. And boy, that triggered the whole thing throughout the country. That was like the second or third night, and that sent a signal all throughout the country. We got him. We've been trying to get him there. Just read, please, what they've been writing for years. Please read what Black Lives Matter writes and stop the nonsense of romanticizing them. There's not a sweet little group that wants to do away with police brutality. I don't know. I have one of their manifestos here. I don't even see police brutality mentioned in it. Maybe I missed it. I didn't read it carefully enough. It sure isn't emphasized. I'll tell you what's emphasized. This is what Black Lives Matter stands for. Please, Americans, become aware of the fact they want to take your government as you know it away from you. They may even want to take your house away from you. They want you to live in a lawless society. Take a look at CHAZ or the Autonomous Zone or the Democrat version of the future of America, the thing they did in Seattle. That's what they have in mind. All this stuff that came up in the last couple of weeks, ending bail, letting people out of prison, things like ending the police, defunding the police. This isn't spontaneous. This has been their agenda for years. Here's a document that goes back to 2017 from them. Don't see a word about police brutality. Don't see a word about black-on-black crime. I have no idea what this has to do with Black lives. Since 2019, 9,000 blacks were killed, not by police. 7,500 of them were killed by other blacks. There isn't a word here about how to save those people. Not a word. Black Lives Matter ignores 99% of the black lives. It's all about less than 1%. That's the 9 unarmed blacks who were killed by police last year. When there were 7,500 that were killed by other blacks. But they don't even mention those 9 in here. Here's what they talk about. They talk about end to money bail. What that means is you get arrested for drugs and you go right back out on the street. You get arrested for selling drugs and you go right back out on the street, so that there isn't too much of an interference in your business of selling heroin, cocaine, illegal prescription drugs, meth, whatever the heck you happen to specialize in, and marijuana. End to the use of past criminal history. That means when I hire somebody, I can't find out if they were a convicted rapist or murderer. The demilitarization of law enforcement, including law enforcement in schools and on college campuses. Don't know what that means, but that sounds like you want to take the guns away from the police. Since all these guys have guns, and we see them carrying around. I mean, just right now they got machine guns around the Wendy's in Atlanta, where the shooting took place, which was a totally justifiable shooting, where a police officer is being framed because of the out of control emotions of our country, and of the way in which the left plays on us through propaganda and all kinds of devices that go back to Marxism. I mean, if you just calmly look at that video, that police officer is completely innocent. So I hope you realize we're now framing an innocent man to make them happy. They want an end to public jails, detention centers, youth facilities, and prisons as we know them. If you have 9,000 murders last year, I'm talking about just blacks now. If you have 9,000 murders of blacks, presumably you have 9,000 or so murderers. Where would you like to put them? Want to take them home here? We're going to end public jails. We're going to end jails as we know them. Oh, we'll do have a capital punishment too. So, I mean, what do these communists want to do with the people who murder their own people? I imagine the people who murder us, they want to give them awards. But the people who murder other blacks, and they're supposed to be the Black Lives Matter movement, what do they want to do with them? Apparently nothing. Then they want reparations. They want a guaranteed minimum livable income for all black people just because they're black. Doesn't say if they come from a family that was slaves. So presumably a black person who comes here from Caribbean 10 years ago should get paid an income and not work for the rest of his life. And then they want a commission to study further reparations. In fact, they've gotten it through the racist House of Representatives that is run by Nancy Pelosi, H.R. 40. I call it racist because whether she knows it or not, Nancy Pelosi is a virulent racist. Anyone who can't stand up to these people, and she hasn't said a word about what they're doing to our country and how they're using race to divide us. Anybody who does that is either a racist or is guilty about their own feelings of racism. It's only a matter of mass liberal guilt that has them bowing down and going like this. And I don't know, maybe they have something to be guilty about. I don't. They want the retroactive decriminalization and immediate release and record expungement of all drug-related offenses and prostitution. Well, drug-related offenses means the people who sell drugs. It means, in my day, I prosecuted mafia drug dealers. I prosecuted Turkish drug dealers. Prosecuted a lot of Colombian cartel owners. And I prosecuted Nicky Barnes, remember? Frank James, remember the movie with Denzel Washington? We're going to let him out of prison. We're going to let him out of prison. They say all drug dealers. I don't know if they mean all black drug dealers or all drug dealers. So if they want to let out all drug dealers, they're going to let out the Nicky Barnes and the Frank James of our day, people who sell millions and millions of dollars worth of drugs and live off the killing of the young people in their neighborhoods. They may mean all drug dealers, which would include the Colombian cartel people. And these people are alternatively drug dealers and murderers. The idea that the people sitting in a federal prison who are there for drug offenses are nonviolent criminals is only an idea from people who are stupid. Drug dealers carry guns. Drug dealers shoot each other. Drug dealers are extremely violent. And in federal prisons, there are a very small minority of people who are just drug users. And probably they should be gotten out. It would still leave you with about 90% of the people who are in federal prisons. But they want to let everybody out. We'd have more drug dealing in this country. It would go up by 5 times. They want they want to end the police. No police. They want to be able to select their own police. When I came into office, the city had gone through years of 1,900, 2,200, 2,400, 1,900 murders a year. By the time I left, it was down to 500, and by the time Bloomberg left, it was down to 300. How did we do it? Well, a couple of things, but we did it with police. We did it with the anti-crime unit that de Blasio just disbanded. The day after he disbanded it, there was a shooting every hour for 24 hours. It happened immediately. Let's be clear on this. The way I took it down by 60% and saved more black lives than any mayor in the history of this country, I did it with very innovative programs like CompStat, but I did it with a lot of police officers. You take those police officers away, and the people who are going to be victimized in New York City, 7 times out of 10, are black people. You're getting them killed with that irresponsible, stupid, Marxist, anarchist idea. And the people of our country that are supporting Black Lives Matter, the corporations that are giving them money, are actually contributing as this agenda gets unfolded in the death of more black people and other people. you are contributing to an organization that has an agenda that will surely lead to carnage. It's already doing it. It's already doing it. They want a divestment from industrial multinational use of fossil fuels. Guess they want to do away with airplanes like AOC. And they want a fully funded education from day one to whenever they want to stop it. And they want a right to restore land, which when you read it means they can go pick out land that they want in reparations. It happens to be your house, too bad. You may have had nothing to do with slavery. You may have come here, your family may have come along after slavery was over, but I mean, you got to pay. This manifesto, for any educated person, is without any doubt a Marxist-Leninist document. It reads very, very similar to the Communist Manifesto, if you put one right next to the other, of 1848, written by Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, that talked about class struggle, first of all, creating so much turmoil it'll bring society down, getting people to rid themselves of nationalism, to hate their country. Sound familiar? Also, Nazism. First thing is, get people to hate their country. What's more important than country is the working class dominating and controlling. One class, working class. Get rid of the bourgeoisie, the rich people, middle class people. Everybody's one class. No nation to get in the way of things. No America, no Britain. Now, don't things start making sense to you? Doesn't the Colin Kaepernick taking a knee all of a sudden start to make sense to you? You don't have to take a knee during the national anthem and the presentation of the American flag to remind us of police brutality. You don't have to degrade our national anthem and our flag in order to protest police brutality, unless you think police brutality involves all of America. I mean, we're talking about the biggest and broadest description of America, our flag, and our national anthem. You may not feel that emotion. I do. I think anybody who ever put their hand up to swear an allegiance to uphold the laws of the United States feels it. I do today. And it's the thing that unites us. And you're attributing police brutality as if it's all of America. What a horrible defamation of your country. And not only that, what does it have to do with it now? We know about police brutality. We just had 1,000 protests over it and about 50 riots. We don't need people disgracing the national anthem or making it appear as if not everyone in this country agrees with the national anthem or the flag. But it's calculated, along with many, many other things, to get you to hate America. They want you to hate your country because they want to break you of your nationality. They want to take it away from you. They want to rip it away from you. That's why they tear down monuments. Well, they say they're tearing down monuments of the Confederates. Last time I checked, Theodore Roosevelt was not a Confederate. Ulysses Grant defeated the Confederates. Columbus had nothing to do with the Civil War. He didn't even know there was going to be a Civil War. And he happened to be a great hero to the Italian Americans and Spanish Americans. Now, yeah, sure, he was a flawed man. Almost all our heroes are flawed men. I think some of the people they would put up as heroes are flawed men. You don't go tearing down a country's history unless you're trying to destroy that country and you're trying to destroy the love that people have for that country. And unless you're trying to separate that so that you can impose on us the kind of government you want, not the kind of government that was given to us by people far more intelligent and actually even morally superior to you. Because they didn't kill, and they didn't ignore killings, and they didn't riot, and they were people of their times, and some of them were unable to rise above it. Shame on them. Some were able to rise above it. Well, we should be proud of them. And some were able to struggle with it, like Jefferson. And in his struggles with it, he built into our founding documents the words that eventually liberated all of us. He made it a goal for us. I don't say that everything he did was right. It wasn't. But had those words not been written with the great genius of Thomas Jefferson, I don't know how much longer the struggle would have been. And he struggled with it as a man. He was not strong enough to overcome it, but he was guilty enough to feel it. And maybe that expressed where a lot of Americans were, and it helped them overcome it. So, I mean, history is very complex. But you don't rip a nation's history away unless you try to engender hatred of that nation. This is now a hate America movement. Remember how Democrats used to be blame America first? They've now begun to tolerate and embrace a hate America first movement. And why do I say Democrats? Because unless, if you love this country, you got to speak up. You got to speak up against it. You can't go hide. The reason Nazism took over was a lot of people hid, never spoke up. Same thing in Russia. Same thing when you ever have oppression. People go hide because they're scared. Well, I mean, Nancy Pelosi is hiding. Chuck Schumer is hiding. We know Joe Biden is hiding in a basement. They've said nothing about this. They've said nothing about this defamatory attack on our country. These burning of flags and pulling down of statues of unparalleled heroes like Ulysses Grant and Theodore Roosevelt. They've said nothing about the brazen ignorance of this mob in doing that. And they've said nothing about the 24 people that were killed by these riots or the hundreds of people that get killed in Chicago in a month. They don't care about them. They're sitting by trying to take political advantage of this hateful attack on America, on this deliberate attempt by these anarchist groups based on things they predicted they would do to try to get Americans to separate from America and then to frighten them and to have them submit by kneeling. They don't even know what they're kneeling about. They have no idea what they're kneeling about. When I was given an honorary knighthood by the Queen of England, I didn't kneel. Americans don't kneel. Maybe you do it as a religious thing, but you certainly don't do it as part of a government thing. Kneel? Heads of corporations kneeling? You realize what they're doing to us? How far it's gone? We got to fight back. And I don't mean we got to fight back the way they fight. We got to fight back by speaking up. We got to fight back by not kneeling. We got to fight back by saying, how stupid are you to attack Ulysses Grant? And Americans, please don't follow people as ignorant as this. Don't follow people as violent as this, and don't follow people as committed to communism as this. Because every place communism has been tried, people that were hurt were the poor people. So, I think you should pay close attention to this. You should do the best you can to overcome the unbelievable wave of propaganda that comes from our corrupt media. This is an attempt to fundamentally change who we are and what we are. You want to be something like you've seen in these riots and protests, well, okay. But if you want to be an America that's built on law, stability, ordered liberty, where we have a police department that mostly, heroically, takes care of us and occasionally fails, and we'll try hard to have them never fail. If you want to have a military that's the strongest in the world that can protect us, and if you want America to be the strongest country in the world because it's the best country in the world, then you've got to reject this. And there are ways to do it with your words and with your actions, and then also with your vote. These people sitting back, allowing this to happen, like Biden and Pelosi and Schumer, should get a political message that's so devastating that maybe it will awaken their feelings as Americans to straighten out their political party that has now enabling a war of hatred on America. Thank you. And we'll be back in a few days.